Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, depending on where you are. I have the pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar focusing on sustainable nitrogen management global developments. This webinar has actually been organized by the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management, the GPNM, as part of a series in the lead up to UNEA 6. My name is Sarah Iweke. I'm actually a moderator for today, and I have recently joined the Source to Sea Pollution Unit here at UNEP in Nairobi. So without further ado, allow me to introduce you to the Principal Coordinator of the Marine and Freshwater Branch here at UNEP, Leticia Cavallo, and I welcome her to officially open this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and welcome on board once more. Good day, everybody, wherever you are. As an authoritative advocate for the global environment, UNEP's convening power and rigorous scientific research has provided a platform for continuing to engage, act boldly, and advance the global environmental agenda, including on challenges related to nutrients. Excess nitrogen in the environment in a reactive form, which comes from the use of synthetic fertilizers, the discharge of wastewater, or the combustion of fossil fuels, is a hazard, polluting land, water, and air. It also exacerbates climate change and depletes the ozone layer. Today's webinar, entitled Sustainable Nitrogen Management Global Developments, is organized by the Global Partnership on Nutrients Management, for which UNEP provides Secretariat services in order to continue providing technical support to the process of UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen. This has been convened by the Executive Director of UNEP to facilitate the implementation of 2 sustainable nitrogen management resolutions passed by the United Nations Environment Assembly, the world's highest level decision-making body on the environment. This webinar aims to showcase the developments made thus far in sustainable nitrogen management globally. The topics that will be discussed today include UNEA resolutions on sustainable nitrogen management and the implementation of the coming Montreal Biodiversity Framework, Target 7 in particular, that's targeting pollution and nitrogen management, and other initiatives in the UN system and globally. The Global Partnership on Nutrients Management will continue to organize these kinds of webinars as we move forward for all stakeholders to continue exchanging information and knowledge in the lead up of the UNEA 6 in March next year, 2024. I'm sure that this webinar will provide an excellent overview on global developments, and I really hope it will accelerate action for sustainable nitrogen management. I would like to thank you for joining us today and wishing you now an excellent session. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Leticia, for setting the scene. We will now move on to the presentations, followed by a brief panel discussion. Each panelist will make a short presentation of around 7 minutes, which will leave around 20 minutes in the end to dive into the actual discussion. Also noting that we would like this webinar to be as interactive as possible, so we kindly ask you to put your questions in the chat box, and these will later be raised during the Q&A session. So now allow me to introduce the first presenters who will highlight the 2 UNEA resolutions that Leticia just mentioned on sustainable nitrogen management and the progress made towards implementing these resolutions. We have first of all Resolution 414, which will be presented by Himali De Costa, who is an Assistant Director in the Natural Resource Management Division at the Ministry of Environment in Sri Lanka. And then the second resolution, 5.2, which will be presented by my colleague Stephanie van der Poel, who works as Program Management Officer in the Source to Sea unit here also at UNEP in Nairobi. So without further ado, allow me to hand over to Himali. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. So it's a great pleasure to join this webinar today. Greetings from Sri Lanka. Okay, I will be talking about the UNIA Resolution 5.2 on sustainable nitrogen management and about the steps Sri Lanka has taken for sustainable nitrogen management after the resolution was adopted. Next slide, please. Thank you. I think before going to the UNIA Resolution 5.2, I would like to do a brief background information. And I think that the voluntary efforts of scientists globally to bring international and intergovernmental attention to sustainable nitrogen management over the last 2 decades climaxed at the fourth session of the UN Environment Assembly in March 2019, when the resolution on sustainable nitrogen management was proposed by the government of India, and when it was adopted at the Assembly. Soon after the UNIA 4 Assembly, Sri Lanka realized the importance of sustainable nitrogen management, and accordingly, Ministry of Environment took the leadership and formed an interministerial committee to work on nitrogen. So actually, this interministerial committee was consist of the main ministries related to sustainable nitrogen management in Sri Lanka, which include Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Plantation, Ministry of Industry and Transport as well. And other than that, with the support of all the other stakeholders and relevant experts of the field, we were able to prepare the Colombo Declaration on Sustainable Nitrogen Management and Sri Lanka's status report on sustainable nitrogen management as well. Next slide, please. In October 2019, the government of Sri Lanka and the United Nations Environment Programme, in partnership with SAKEF, International Nitrogen Management System, and many other international organizations, launched the United Nations Global Campaign on Sustainable Nitrogen Management in Colombo. At this event, member states came together and adopted a Colombo Declaration with an ambition to halve nitrogen waste by 2030. Actually, this event was a great achievement with over 100 delegates were participated at this event, representing 29 countries. And as I told you earlier, the Sri Lanka status report on sustainable nitrogen management was published to mark the launching of the UN Global Campaign on Sustainable Nitrogen Management. Next slide, please. In this slide, you can see some pictures of the event. In the top corner, you can see the delegates from different countries, and in the bottom corner, you can see the press conference which was held at the that event, and the Sri Lankan status report on sustainable nitrogen management is in my right-hand side. Next slide, please. Next, move on to the UNIA Resolution 5.2. Next slide, please. At the 5th UN Environment Assembly, which was held in March 2022, Sri Lanka proposed the second resolution on sustainable management, sustainable nitrogen management, and it was co-sponsored by Brazil, Maldives, Pakistan, and Uganda. The resolution was adopted by UN member states, and UNIA 5.2 resolution on sustainable nitrogen management encourages member states to accelerate actions to significantly reduce nitrogen waste globally by 2030 and beyond through the improvement of sustainable nitrogen management. It also encourages member states to share information on national action plans as available according to national circumstances. And the resolution is also helping to raise awareness globally on the need to take action on nitrogen. And to address the need for better coordination of nitrogen policies, such as through an interconvention nitrogen coordination mechanism, and to develop in a conversation about nitrogen waste. Next slide, please. So actually, from now on, I'm going to present about the current status of sustainable nitrogen management in Sri Lanka, what we have done so far after adopting the resolution. As a proponent of the UNIA 5.2 resolution on sustainable nitrogen management, Ministry of Environment of Sri Lanka is responsible for providing insights to develop the National Action Plan for Sustainable Nitrogen Management with the collaboration of our stakeholders. Our ministry established Interagency Committee for Sustainable Nitrogen Management. Actually, we wrote to each and every stakeholder agencies, request them to nominate a suitable responsible officer from their organization to represent this interagency committee on sustainable nitrogen management. So actually they respond very positively, and we had a few meetings and discussions, and in this subcommittee, actually the subcommittee members proposed us to establish 4 subcommittees to when we are developing action plan. They told us that it will be helpful if we establish subcommittees according to different sectors. Accordingly, we established 4 subcommittees, one for agriculture, and another one for transport and industry, and the other one is for water and health, and the last subcommittee, or the 4th subcommittee, was established for biodiversity and forestry. Each of these subcommittee represent all the relevant stakeholders. So we had discussions and awareness creation workshops for these subcommittees, and during these awareness creation programs and committee meetings, we realized that we should have an expert committee on sustainable nitrogen management as well, to advise and facilitate the development of national action plan on sustainable nitrogen management. And other than that, the University of Peradeniya of Sri Lanka actually prepared the National Nitrogen Policy Report on Sri Lanka, and according to that report, we were able to recognize that there are 115 policies in Sri Lanka that directly or indirectly related to nitrogen-related matters. Next slide, please. This is the biggest event we had this year. Actually, the Ministry of Environment, together of University of Peradeniya, we collaboratively organized the first national symposium on sustainable nitrogen management in last June. Actually, this symposium was a platform for policymakers and academics, researchers, as well as administrative officers and all the stakeholders to discuss about the nitrogen pollution in Sri Lanka and provide their insights to develop a roadmap to halve nitrogen waste in Sri Lanka. Actually, for the inaugural session of this symposium, both Minister of Agriculture and Minister of Environment participated and showed their commitment to the sustainable nitrogen management, and it was a big event for us. Next slide, please. The objective of this symposium was to access the current nitrogen status and nitrogen budget and to identify the policy gaps to minimize nitrogen pollution and to share knowledge among stakeholder agencies, academics, and all other interested groups, and to actually get directives to develop national action plan on sustainable nitrogen management. Next slide, please. And research presentations were done under 5 thematic areas at this symposium. The nitrogen pollution by agriculture, industry, energy, transport, and waste sector. Second thematic area was impacts of nitrogen pollution on human, animal, and ecosystem health. And third one is on impact of nitrogen on economic performance and social well-being. Fourth thematic area was nitrogen use efficiency in agriculture, crops, aquaculture, and forestry. And the fifth one is strategies to reduce nitrogen pollution in soil, water, air, and ecosystems. Next slide, please. Actually, end of the actually, in the second day of the symposium, there was a workshop session. This workshop session was held on the, as I mentioned you, in the second day of the symposium with the engagement of professionals from different sectors such as agriculture, industry, transport, water, and health. And there were 3 main activities in the workshop. The first activity was a group activity to identify experience on nitrogen management, and the second activity, group activity, is to design a vision for sustainable nitrogen management, and the third activity is identification of sector actions and measures to contribute to nitrogen action plans on sustainable nitrogen management. We had 4 groups for agriculture sector, and 1 group for industry and transport sector, and 1 group for biodiversity and forestry sector, and in another 1 group for water and health sector. And actually, the workshop outcomes were analyzed, and a report was prepared by the university. And last month, in 24th of August, we had an interagency committee meeting on sustainable nitrogen management, and the outcomes of the workshop was presented at this meeting, and we had very fruitful discussion on this. We hope we will be able to develop a draft action plan before end of this year. And even though we are facing many difficulties as a country, but we strongly believe that sustainable nitrogen management as a part of our priorities, and with the assistance of all the stakeholders, such as government or agencies and private sector, academia and research and international organizations. We hope we may be able to have nitrogen waste in Sri Lanka by 2030. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Okay, that's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Himali. That was great, and really good to see an overview of the resolution, well, 5.2 actually. I would now invite, in the interest of time, for Stephanie to directly step in and give an overview of resolution 4.14. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Stephanie van der Poel, and I work at the Ecosystems Division of UNEP. And today I will be speaking on Resolution 414, which was proposed by the Government of India for the 4th session of the UN Environment Assembly. Next slide, please. So here you go. This is the resolution. It's 414, entitled Sustainable Nitrogen Management. And as I mentioned, it was adopted in 2019 at the 4th session of the UN Environment Assembly. Next slide, please. So the resolution recognizes multiple pollution threats resulting from anthropogenic reactive nitrogen, with adverse effects on the terrestrial, freshwater, and marine environments, and contributing to air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, and acknowledging the benefits as well of nitrogen use for food and energy production. The resolution supports exploring options for better management of the nitrogen cycle to achieve the SDGs, including through the sharing of assessment methodologies, relevant best practices, and guidance documents in emerging technologies for recovery and recycling of nitrogen and other such nutrients. Next slide, please. The resolution consists of 6 operative paragraphs, which request the Executive Director of UNEP to A, consider the options for facilitating improved coordination of policies across the global nitrogen cycle at national, regional, and global levels. B, exploration of the options for better management of the global nitrogen cycle and how they could help achieve the SDGs. C, coordinate existing platforms for assessment of the multiple environmental, food, and health benefits of possible goals for improved nitrogen management. D, provision of appropriate training and capacity building for policymakers and practitioners to develop widespread understanding and awareness of nitrogen cycling and opportunities for action. E, sharing existing information and knowledge in the development of an evidence-based and intersectorally coherent approach. And F, to report back to the 6th session of the UN Environment Assembly, which will take place next year, 2024. Next slide, please. I will now share a couple of highlights on the progress achieved thus far implementing the resolution. So with regards to paragraph A, to assist the implementation of Resolution 414, a UNEP working group on nitrogen was established and held its first meeting in June 2020. Due to the COVID pandemic, however, the working group met again after the adoption of Resolution 5.2 on sustainable nitrogen management. One of the co-chairs of the working group, who's in today's webinar, will provide more information later today. Next slide, please. With regards to paragraph B, exploration of the options for better management of global nitrogen cycle, UNEP and FAO have organized a number of joint events. For example, an event that took place in December 2020 on nitrogen challenged in agri-food systems, half nitrogen waste by 2030. Another one under the UN Food Summit on sustainable nitrogen management for sustainable food systems. UNEP has been working with OIC UNESCO on the development of an index for coastal eutrophication potential, ICEP, as an indicator for SDG 14.1.1a on eutrophication. Next slide, please. With regards to paragraph C on the coordination of existing platforms for assessment, an international nitrogen assessment under the UNEP GEF project entitled Towards an Establishment of an International Nitrogen Management System, known as INMS, is currently being finalized and will be available next year. Next slide, please. Regarding paragraph D on training and capacity building for policymakers, UNEP is also about to launch a global campaign entitled Beat Nitrogen Pollution, which we hope will be launched later in September, well, this month. Next slide, please. And regarding paragraph E on sharing existing information and knowledge, substantive progress is being made via these kind of webinars, which are organized by the GPNM. Progress is also being made under the work of the UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen and ongoing projects such as the nutrient recovery from wastewater in India. Next slide, please. And with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was a great bridge now to the next presentation. So we can proceed with the next presenter, Mihai Constantinescu, the co-chair of the UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen that was established following Resolution 414, as we have just heard from Stephanie. Mihai Constantinescu has more than 15 years of experience in developing and implementing agricultural and rural development strategies and financing programs in Romania and the Western Balkan countries, working for the Romanian Ministry for Agriculture, European Commission and Danish International Development Agency. And Mihai joined the Romanian Ministry of Environment in 2017. Mihai will showcase the importance of the working group and also their ongoing activities. The floor is yours, Mihai. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Just to make sure that I have a presentation, but it's not very clear for me. If you'll share it for me, or I have to share it myself.
Thank you, Mihai. We will share for you just 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyway, most of the aspects in regards to the resolutions were well presented by Stephanie, and my duty is now to present you the terms of reference of the working group on nitrogen. And I have to start by saying that actually the terms of reference were built on the provisions of the resolutions 5.2 and 414. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we have under the working group terms of reference prepared based on the provisions of the resolutions. The working group is now before its 4th meeting, which will take place at the end of September in Nairobi, as well as a hybrid meeting. And the working group is served by the Secretariat ensured by UNEP. My proposal for you is to go through some of the most important provisions of the terms of reference and to present you the current status. One of the most important provisions is related to a roadmap for the implementation of the resolutions before the next UNEA meeting, which is envisaged to take place at the beginning of next year. What we have now, we have a timeline with milestones and outputs, a timeline that was presented at our last meeting of the working group. Another provision it relates to the technical and policy recommendations to accelerate actions to significantly reduce nitrogen waste globally by 2030 and beyond through improvement of sustainable nitrogen management. We agreed within the working group to have a template for national action plans, and this was initiated, I believe, starting with the second meeting. We worked together under the umbrella of the working group at the third meeting, and we will be ready to have a consolidated template on action plans. Furthermore, we initiated GPNM webinars like this one, and we believe this is an important tool for providing technical and policy recommendations. Next slide, please. Share on information on existing national action plans. I put in brackets actions because not necessarily countries are having this title, as available according to the national circumstances. It was a kind request from the working group to share among the participants based on a template information about the actions on reducing nitrogen pollution in the member states. We received detailed information from 24 countries. An initial analysis was prepared in April and discussed in Bucharest. Since then, other countries sent information, and we are now preparing a consolidated document to be posted on the working group meeting before the meeting at the end of the month. Another important provision, which actually will be at the core of the next meeting, is to have identified possible modalities for the options being considered for improved coordinations of policies across global nitrogen cycle on national, regional, and global levels, including, among other options, the intergovernmental coordination mechanism for nitrogen policies. What we have so far, we have a report from a working group task team. We have GPNM, which we consider one of the most important option in improving the coordinations among policies. And we initiated discussions with EMG Nexus dialogues, as well with various conventions. Next slide, please. Provide a forum for the dissemination and communication of the information related to the implementation of UNEA resolutions 414.5/2. We believe that the working group on nitrogen proved its role and value in disseminating the information. And we agreed that at each working group for nitrogen to have a back-to-back meeting with the experts that are participating at the working group, but to be a bit more informal, to have the discussions a bit more open. So we call it informal expert meeting. Also, we believe in this type of webinar organized by GPNM, as well in EMG Nexus dialogues and other tools further to be identified. The advantage stays with existing bodies and forums because it's nothing else to set up. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, at our next working group on nitrogen, will be centered around the improved coordination policies across the nitrogen cycle and modalities to do so. Next slide. Thank you. From now on, I will have more questions. questions that we'll have to raise ourselves during the meeting in Nairobi, because we have some challenges ahead, and I believe representatives of the countries and the other participants will have to openly discuss. And now I'm just raising with you these questions, actually in the preparation of the next meeting. We should consider that the main priority currently is to encourage the progress in the country with already a strong nitrogen sustainable management. And this is challenging because we need to have clear what are the top priorities in this type of the countries, and then how and up to what level nitrogen use efficiency can be increased without losing the production and producing more cost and generating more costs, because these are legitimate questions in relation to our next steps. It will be important for ourselves to raise the question about the appetite of doing more and to consider the concerns on losing competitiveness in the market, and what it will be the expectations for other countries in doing more from the countries that are already implementing relatively strong actions. Next slide. Thank you. Well, as I discussed about the countries that are already having strong actions, it's now the time to raise some questions in regards to the countries that are in need of increasing the use of fertilizers. So one of the questions is how the nitrogen waste reduction is perceived in countries in need of increasing the use of nitrogen, and what is the level of awareness in regards to nitrogen waste, and how much is this a priority at the moment. And another question is about how sustainable are the subsidies for inputs in agriculture. So I try somehow to put in a mirror different type of questions from different type of countries. And I believe these are the type of questions that we should openly put on in discussions to jointly find the right answers. Next slide, please. And there are some key challenges as well in the process of making ensuring a better policy coordinations. We have the working group on nitrogen, and we consider at this moment that further actions on raising awareness at national level are needed at the moment. This was revealed in the working group, in the last working group that we had in Bucharest in April. And it appears as well as the top priority of the working group to further support the countries in starting preparations for the national action plans, because it was revealed that there are numerous countries without implemented policies for the moment. In regards to GPNM, GPNM is having and may further have an important role. It can be a think tank on nitrogen, favoring informal cooperation between different stakeholders, because it includes, it's a multi-actor body, and includes as well scientists, private sector, as well public administration and representatives of the member states all together. Next slide, please. I have two other set of questions that I believe we should keep for the next working group meeting. One, it relates to UN conventions and MEAs, and what it will be the most suitable cooperation method between the working group and the existent UN conventions and other bodies. Other UN bodies that we should consider are FAO and UNICEF. About scientific community, it should be sufficient space and efforts to be made to integrate the scientific community and other stakeholders in the process of the working group on nitrogen, while the challenge remains of still having the working group driven by the focal points nominated by the member states. It may be a solution to further extend the discussions in the GPNM. And the question remains with the local research in less developed countries, because we all know that local solutions should be found in local research. And probably a question that remains to be open is about the future funding opportunities for research and including local research. Next slide, please. Well, the biggest questions probably it remains with the future of the working group, the expectations and the role that the working group may have after the UNESIX. And I believe we should go back to the real purpose of the working group, and to see if this working group in the given time is able, and it will be able, to deliver the proper results for stepping at the next level. So the main questions remains with the need of further consolidation of the international cooperation through the existing working group, or will be ready at the end of this year or beginning of next year to step into a next level of international policy coordination by upgrading the working group. And why this question is raised, we should have open discussions about the sufficient awareness actions raised at the level of the member states, and if we can make further steps without at least drafts on national action plans or initiated actions at the level of the member states. Next slide. And yes, with this, I finished. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mihai, for this comprehensive overview and the progress made in the nitrogen working group. We would now, in the interest of time, dive straight into the next presentation, which will be on the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and specific focus on Target 7. So I will invite Monika Kobayashi, who works for the Convention on Biological Diversity in Montreal, where she leads the implementation of the program of work on agricultural biodiversity in inland waters. Monika, if you could keep your presentation to 10 minutes, if possible, that would be really appreciated. But yeah, handing over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I will try to condense my presentation. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, because now I cannot see anything. So thank you very much, Sarah, dear colleagues, and dear participants, for this opportunity to be here today. It's an honor to have this chance to discuss this important subject on sustainable nitrogen management at the global level with all of you. So today, I would like to propose to start discussing some global challenges that we are facing, and then to give a brief overview of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and then we can focus on Target 7, and then finally, we can discuss what next. So let's start with the global challenges. Right now, we are living numbers of important global crises, including water, biodiversity loss, climate, and pollution crisis. And at the same time, we need to produce more and more food to feed the increasing population, the growing population, with very limited resources. In this scenario, we are also working together to defend the human rights. For instance, the right for food, the right for clean water and sanitation, and more recently, the right for a healthy, clean, and sustainable environment. And if we look at the intersection of those human rights, we can see the role that sustainable nitrogen management plays. For example, to increase food production by closing the yield gaps through a more efficient nutrient and water management. Second, to reduce the excess of nutrients released in the environment and to provide clean water. And then the third, reducing the soil and the air pollution to promote a healthy environment and increase human health and well-being. So, as you know, the excess of reactive nitrogen is an important driver of biodiversity loss, and also it's an increasing driver. So the loss of biodiversity impacts our future on this planet. We all need a global response to the biodiversity crisis that we are living in. And for this, the Global Biodiversity Outlook 5 provides some pathways to bend the curve of biodiversity loss and put the planet back, in a recovery path. This brings me to the second point, that is the overview of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. With this sense of urgency to bend the curve of biodiversity loss, last December, all countries adopt the new biodiversity framework. And to achieve its vision of having a world living in harmony with nature, and also its mission to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030, we need to encourage actions beyond our usual constituencies, that is the environment community. We need to engage all of you, the whole society. So this is the framework. It has 4 goals and 23 targets divided in groups: reducing targets, reducing the threats, meeting people needs, and tools and solutions. It aims to drive the urgent and transformative action by all society, from governments of all levels. And for this, we need to enhance collaboration and synergies at global, regional, national, and local levels. We need to work together closely with partners, as previous presenters mentioned. So it has 4 goals. Goal A is about protected areas, the conservation of genetic resources, in the corridors, etc. The second, goal B, is about sustainable use of biodiversity. Goal C is about access and benefit sharing, and Goal D is about implementation and the financial mechanisms. So this framework is a human-based approach, and also it's people-oriented. The targets are interlinked, and they invite us to break silos and have this multi-stakeholder and more holistic approach. Due to time constraint, I'm not going into details of each target, so let's focus on target 7. Inside target 7, let's focus on the excess of reactive nitrogen, which is a driver of biodiversity loss and also a cause and consequence of ecosystem degradation. It also contributes and accentuates the impact of other drivers of biodiversity loss, such as invasive alien species and climate change. Specifically in aquatic environments, it results in eutrophication, and this brings many losses in important ecosystem services loss. But the good news is that we can better manage the nitrogen use without compromising the food security. With this, we can minimize the loss of a large proportion of nitrogen to the environment. So this subject is part of the convention for a long time. During the first biodiversity framework in 2006, it was already a concern, and it was under Goal 7. Last decade, it was under Biodiversity Target 8, which unfortunately was not fully implemented, despite the increasing efforts to have a better use of fertilizers. And actually, globally, the average of nutrients use is still increasing. So what is the role for nitrogen-related targets in helping to bend the curve of biodiversity loss? In the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the Target 7 deals with the reduction of pollution risks and the negative impact of all sorts of pollution. And more specifically, under letter A, this deals with the reduction of the excess of nutrient lost to the environment by half. So this target has a headline indicator that is 7.1 index of coastal eutrophication potential that another colleague presented, because it's really close related to the SDG indicator 14.1.1. And then after we have some component indicators and complementary indicators related to nutrient management that goes under the headline indicator that also are under discussion. Now, let's see how the Target 7 related with all other Kunming-Montreal targets. Because the Target 7 on its own, it cannot be successfully implemented. It's closely related, for example, to Target 10, that is about sustainable agriculture production practice, to Target 18, that's about the subsidies, how to phase out the harmful subsidies, and how to scale up the positive incentives for biodiversity, including fertilizers. Then we have Target 11 on ecosystem services. We have also Target 1 in spatial planning and effective area management, Target 2 on ecosystem restoration, Target 3 on protected areas, Target 12 on the benefit of green and blue spaces for human well-being, Target 16 on sustainable consumption, including the reduction of food waste and loss, and target 22 on indigenous people and local communities and gender responsive participation. So those are some examples because we can go through basically all targets. And then what's next? The current challenges that we are facing, like the fertilizer price increase, the excess of nutrients released in the environment, the high rates of food loss and waste, can help us to foster this transition toward a more sustainable food system. So the benefit of reducing the nitrogen waste could help us to combat pollution, could help to reduce biodiversity loss, to ensure food security, and also offer a potential to save money. So we have many successful examples that demonstrate that the judicious use of fertilizers is possible. And this is one example from China in which millions of smallholder farmers have support from extension agents that gave them training on how to better manage the inputs, the fertilizer utilization. And the result of these studies that the small farmers, like 20 million farmers, were able to increase yields and then reduce the fertilizer needs and also the waste. We also have the example from India with the zero budget and natural farming, in which they try to make synergies between crop production and livestock, and then with this synergy, how to improve the soil biodiversity and also the pest control and also the nutrient cycle. So this also is a successful example. Then the way forward. It's about implementation. All parties now are implementing and developing their national targets and their indicators. We need partners that will bring different expertise on board and also bring different constituencies to work together in this collective effort to help countries to implement the framework. We need coherence, we need action that address those multiple global challenges together and with common solutions. So now the takeaway message, we all recognize the fundamental need to guarantee food security in first place, but also we know that it's possible that global agriculture production can use nutrients in a sustainable way, in a judicious way, to minimize the waste. And the global challenge cannot be seen as a dichotomy, for example, food security versus biodiversity conservation. They need to go together hand in hand. And the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework can support countries to connect the dots and implement coherent policies, and also that connects biodiversity with other policies, including the ones related to food systems. So we need to leverage synergies to achieve all the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework targets, but also the Sustainable Development Goals all together to not leave anyone behind and live in harmony with nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Monica. Really great to see the overview of Target 7 and, you know, how it's really closely related to not just one, but many other targets. And just endorsing your call for action, you know, now it's time for implementation. I think we've all celebrated the landmark agreement last year. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Before I proceed to the next presenter, just highlighting participants to kindly, you know, post your questions in the chat. And with that, I would now proceed to the next speaker, Hossein Fadai, to provide an overview of the outcomes of the Nexus Dialogue of the UN Environment Management Group on Sustainable Nitrogen Management, which was held in April this year. The UN Environment Management Group actually consists of members from 51 United Nations entities and works to promote joint action, coherent approaches, and synergy on environmental and human settlement issues in the UN system. Hussein Fadai is actually the head of the Secretariat of the United Nations Environment Management Group in Switzerland. So without further ado, Hussein, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and I hope that you can hear and see me well.
Yes, loud and clear, thanks.
Okay, now I'm going to make a presentation, and please confirm if you can put it in present. So I hope that you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can see it now.
You can see it? Great. So let me go from my side also into the presentation. A little bit complicated, but I'm trying to resume in PowerPoint. Can you still see my presentation?
Yes, still on the title page.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for presenting the EMG. As you said, Sarah, the EMG is composed of 52 UN entities. And as part of our coordination role, we organize a number of dialogues within the UN system to increase collaboration, coherence, and cooperation. And okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Sorry. So basically, we were invited by UNEP colleagues to organize an access dialogues on the topic of sustainable nitrogen management in response to the UNE resolution. And as a result of that, we were able to bring a number of agencies in Geneva. And yes, sorry, my colleagues are showing me. So they're not showing it. So maybe again, I do that the same. Or maybe you leave your computer here, and then I can once again present it here. Present. And I redo the presentation because there was a technical problem. It sounds like.
Just confirming that it's reloaded now, so we can still see the title page.
So I can go one back from here. Yeah, that's it. Let's just bring this up because I can look at the presentation. This one, let's see. Okay, Olivia, I cannot see the notes here. I guess I can see them. Okay, that's fine. And then from here I can move on. Now I can just go on. Yeah, exactly. Great. It works. So let me just skip this slide and go to the content. So the aim was to bring the UN entities together to present this issue to their attention and also understand how their different mandates response to this issue of sustainable nitrogen. I think it was a very good discussion to understand different activities, resources, tools, policies of these various UN entities on this topic. It is very evident that we are really looking at a cross-cutting issue that falls into a very delicate and complex nexus of food security, health, environmental sustainability, human rights, and so on. So it's really a very specific example of a complex topic in the Sustainable Development Agenda that, on the one hand, is considered as a nutrient, but on the other hand, is also a potential and actual pollutant. It addresses and serves obviously realization of certain human and societal objectives, but on the other hand, it becomes a threat to the human and also to the nature. So we're really dealing with a very, very specific and complex topic, and how do we actually address it for realization of sustainable development goals, including environmental sustainability and planetary crisis. So it is really, in that sense, a very specific and challenging topic for us to address it. I think the discussion was very helpful to look at the nitrogen management from a point of view of biodiversity agenda, food systems, pollution, climate change, and as it was mentioned by my colleague from the CBD, also look at it from the human rights angle and see how much our policies are actually enough comprehensive to respond to the challenge of nitrogen management. And how much of the tools do we have at our disposal to allow this also to help countries' needs. Our discussion started with the presentation by a colleague from India who brought some very concrete examples of how this issue has been tackled from a prevention point of view at the within India, and she brought to us some very concrete examples with regards to agriculture and farming or livestock management and various initiatives that have been successful. Both from a prevention, but also from a reduction point of view, and also from the finance that it was also referred to in the previous presentation. So we found that example is a very good opening start for us to see how much we can actually relate the UN system contribution to these types of national types of needs. We also heard a number of presentations relating to reduction of nitrogen pollution from our colleagues from FAO, who brought also some good case studies relating to the FAO, both agriculture and also livestock policies, and as well as assessments, tools, and also rules and regulations, in particular the International Code of Conduct for Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizers. Showing that the FAO, while it is an organization that fights for providing the adequate nutrients and food to the population, at the same time is very much cognizant of the pollutant aspects of this substance, and that they are also regulating the agricultural policies and practices to be preventive in terms of their harms, and promoting sustainable agriculture. So those examples are also available in the summary of the dialogue. We also addressed the nitrogen sustainable use, and some of the organizations brought some good examples, and the need for mapping to find existing opportunities and overlaps in the UN system, and the fact that we need to bring a lot of data and knowledge together was highlighted in the discussion, and that we wanted actually to look at some of the also challenges in terms of responding to this topic. So in essence, what was brought to the attention of the meeting was the challenges relating to data, and how much actually we have data to measure the extent of production, consumption, and waste to be able to adjust our policies accordingly. The other dimension was about the adequacy of the policies that exist at the moment. Obviously, at the top of these policies, we have the recent Kunming Montreal GBF Target 7, But then there are also some inadequacies or some shortcomings within that target, because, as I said earlier, you know, most of the existing maybe policies regard this as a nutrient, rather a pollutant. So we really need to look into existing, you know, global policies, either in the area of biodiversity or chemicals management or climate change, to look at nitrogen and to see how they are being perceived within these instruments, and how can we sort of bring out of these policies common messages, and how can we actually address gaps, in particular with regards to the pollution aspects of this substance. The key outcomes of the dialogue obviously were to the need for improving understanding of sustainable nitrogen management. We really need to work on that. As I said, when you look at it from a human rights perspective, for example, one can advocate for the nutrient who would actually safeguard the realization of the right to food, whereas the other sector can actually advocate for realization of the right to a healthy environment, which has been recently adopted. And how do we actually bring a balance into that in the context of sustainable nitrogen management? We need to bring more of understanding, a common understanding about this issue in the UN system. We need to bring allies together in the UN. We know that there is a lot of tools and guidelines and policies that are out there, but the coherence of these policies in showing and communicating a common message needs to be improved. Therefore, it was suggested in the meeting that we need to provide a joint position paper by the UN system to be utilized in their, information and knowledge sharing platforms, and also for awareness raising campaigns. So that was underlined, and that we need also to enhance our knowledge management and information mechanisms in the UN system on this topic. These were the highlights of this event. This event was not a one-off event. We hope that we're able to continue our dialogue with the UN entities in order to support the intergovernmental processes under the UNEA on this topic. We're able to bring more of UN system capacities around the table to support member states, and continue mobilizing the UN system support again to satisfy the needs of the member states. I think I will limit myself here, but I would like again to reiterate what I said earlier, that we are dealing with the topic that it is, at the one hand, a nutrient, but on the other hand, a pollutant. We need to highlight the importance of gathering the knowledge, especially gathering the data, especially from the sources of the pollution, which is mostly the countries who are the major producers of, farming products. And looking into how much this data will help us to measure. We need to look into the rules and the codes and the policies that exist, and to look into the gap areas, in particular in terms of pollution aspects of it. So these were and also looking into the technology and innovation. That was also one of the working groups that look at the technology and innovations and how this can also respond to today's challenge of nitrogen management. I leave it myself here, and I would be happy also to answer any specific questions. Over.
Thank you so much, Hussein. Really great to see how this dialogue was kind of, able to shed light on sustainable nitrogen management from different angles, ranging from human rights to biodiversity, climate change, and so on. And the need to still improve understanding on it and gather knowledge and data. So yeah, looking forward to also seeing more of these. In the interest of time, I believe we have to now proceed to the last presentation. And I would ask the last presenter to switch on the video and walk us through the paper on options and modalities for improved coordination of policies across the global nitrogen cycle. This presentation will be delivered by Claire Hamilton, who is an international environmental lawyer and policy expert with more than 20 years of experience in treaty law and practice. She was commissioned by the UNEP-GEF project towards the establishment of an international nitrogen management system to look at the potential options and modalities for an improved coordination of policies across the global nitrogen cycle as called for in the UNEA resolutions that were presented at the beginning of this webinar. Claire, without further ado, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sarah, and many thanks to UNEP colleagues and the chairs of the working group and the GPNM for inviting me to speak to you all today. Everyone who's here today understands well the breadth of the nitrogen problem, and Leticia set this out extremely well in her introductory remarks, and we've also heard from Mihai and Monica about this in their presentations. Different aspects of the nitrogen cycle fall within the remit of different parts of the UN system, and in very different ways, both positive and negative. Whilst in theory, this allows for each aspect of the nitrogen cycle to be considered and addressed by the body that's best placed to tackle any pollution and waste that might arise from its use, there are still gaps and a lack of coherence in addressing the multiple impacts and finding the balance that Hussein just referred to. This raises a lot of challenges, as Mihai has explained, and as Hussein has said, it also creates a very, very complex institutional situation. So Himali and Stephanie have given comprehensive explanations of Resolution 414 and 5.2. I'm not going to repeat that. I'm going to focus here on one part of the UNEA resolutions, the question of options for improved coordination of policies, which will be the focus of the 4th meeting of the Working Group on Nitrogen later this month. So UNEA Resolution 414 called for consideration of the case for establishing an intergovernmental mechanism for coordination of nitrogen policies. Resolution 5.2 took this a little bit further, and it called for the identification of possible modalities for the options under consideration, including for an intergovernmental coordination mechanism. This work was initially taken forward by a task team established by the Working Group on Nitrogen, and 4 options were considered. And those options are there on the screen for you to see. Option 1, continue with the status quo. Option 2, one existing treaty, multilateral environmental agreement, takes the lead. Option 3, establish a new treaty specifically on nitrogen. And option 4, establish an intergovernmental coordination mechanism for nitrogen policies. So as I mentioned earlier, Resolution 5.2 called for the identification of possible modalities. What do we mean by modalities? What does it mean in this context? Basically, the particular arrangements of structure, approach, hosting, means of working, essentially everything that's needed to operationalize each of the options. So by looking at case studies across the UN system, we can get a good understanding of how a particular approach might work for nitrogen. Now, I'm going to skip over option 1 here, the status quo, on the basis that any change to the status quo means that it's not the status quo anymore. So no modalities are really needed to operationalize that one. So I'm focusing here on the practical aspects. If we want to do something more than we're currently doing, what needs to be put in place to make that happen at international level, to do more in coordinating on nitrogen? So the task force's second option, option 2, was one existing multilateral environmental agreement takes the lead. And the paper uses as a case study the Montreal Protocol. There are mechanisms under the Montreal Protocol that would allow us to add nitrogen as a substance that is dealt with specifically under the protocol. In looking at how we could do that, the example of how HFCs were added to the Montreal Protocol is used. So we can see from that what was needed, what had to happen, and what sort of timescale are we working to. In terms of what has to happen, first of all, of course, we would have to identify which MEA is the most appropriate to take the lead on nitrogen. There would have to be initial discussions to establish an appetite, broad scope, political agreement, political engagement, which will be absolutely crucial to ensuring action. There would need to be a formal amendment proposal, and that proposal would have to be negotiated. Once the negotiations are complete, the amendment would have to be adopted, and then that would have to be ratified. That's the process at national level for countries to become bound by an amendment. And once a certain number of countries have ratified, and this will be specified in the amendment itself, that amendment would enter into force and implementation would follow. So in terms of a timescale, if we're looking at option 2, we could be looking at up to 10 years for all of that to happen. And that's based on the experience that we have there from the Montreal Protocol. Moving on then to option 3, this would be establishing a new treaty entirely on nitrogen. Now, the paper uses the example of the Mercury Convention. We could have used the example of the Plastics Convention, but using Mercury allows us to go from start to finish, from beginning of negotiations right the way through to entry into force and operationalization and implementation at national level. And you'll see from the screen, this is very, very similar in terms of process to what we've just talked about in terms of an amendment. There would need to be those initial discussions to establish appetite and broad scope and secure political agreement and engagement. There would then have to be an agreement to launch negotiations, the negotiation of the treaty itself, adoption of the treaty formally and signature by countries, then ratification. So signature is an indication of agreement with what's in the convention, the treaty itself. Ratification is an agreement to be bound by that treaty. Once a certain number specified in the agreement has been reached, it would enter into force and implementation could start. In terms of a timescale, we're probably looking at a bit longer than the 10 years for the amendment that we've just discussed. And again, that's based on the experience from the Mercury Convention. I'm hoping plastics is going to prove us wrong and do it all much, much quicker. Let's see what happens there. But it can be a very lengthy process. If you have the right political agreement, it can, of course, be quite swift. Then finally, option 4, as considered by the task team. Option 4 would be establishing a new intergovernmental coordination mechanism on nitrogen policies. So I'm going to focus here on a few different aspects of that. Intergovernmental, what does that mean? Well, basically it means that governments are the main driving force and the primary decision makers. And the resolutions from UNEA, both 414 and 52, show a clear desire for any mechanism to be primarily between governments rather than multi-actor or a stakeholder mechanism. And we can see that from the use of the word intergovernmental. There's also a clear direction, as Mihai has said, to consider what already exists. If there's something out there that we can use, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can build on that, we can use it, we can adapt it. And we can see that from the based primarily on existing networks and platforms. And there are lots of examples across the UN system, both in the field of environment and outside the field of environment, that we can draw on here. And you can see these examples in the paper. There are cross-UN coordination groups like the EMG, which will have a very, very important role to play going forward. Issue-specific cross-sectoral coordination mechanisms, multi-stakeholder partnerships like the GPNM itself, international policy frameworks and programs, and cooperation initiatives and voluntary pledges. So what would a mechanism need? Well, basically it would need to have a very clear purpose. We would need to know what it's trying to achieve. There would have to be clarity around membership, including the role of stakeholders. And this is one thing we can see very clearly from the case studies that you'll see in the paper. They are very clear who makes decisions within the different mechanisms and the role of stakeholders within those mechanisms. There would have to be a dedicated secretariat, a clear remit and responsibilities, and a clear modus operandi, a structure and ways of working that is appropriate to what the mechanism is trying to achieve. Now, that's been a real whistle-stop tour through the paper. Please do have a look at it. There are lots of different case studies in there. The paper that the presentation is based on has been made available on the meeting page for the webinar, and it's also available to help inform discussions at Working Group Nitrogen 4. And I hope you will find it helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was a very clear and concise presentation to a very complex paper. As you just indicated, the paper, for those who would like to read it in more detail, is available on the webinar event page, and we just also posted the link in the chat. So it looks like we have to come to the end of our presentations. We apologize that we have taken up a little bit more time than previously anticipated, but I would still like to nonetheless thank all the panelists, presenters for their contributions, and hand over now to my colleague Wanjiru Edna to moderate the Q&A session.
Yeah, can you hear me, Sarah?
He's going to proceed.
Hello?
And Ramesh?
Can you hear me?
Sorry, we will first have a Q&A session, and then I will invite you for the closing remarks.
Okay, sure.
Yes?
Yeah.
Thank you. Wanjiru, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that conclusive and very informative panel session. So now we'll move to the Q&A section. My name is Wanjiru Edna, as Sarah has mentioned. I work at the Source to Sea Pollution Unit at UNEP. We'll now begin the Q&A session. Kindly request all panelists to turn on their cameras. And the first question is to Himali. What are the challenges faced by Sri Lanka in the process of development of the National Action Plan on Sustainable Nitrogen Management?
Actually, the biggest challenge is lack of data or deficiency of data related to the nitrogen waste and the nitrogen pollution in the agriculture sector, transport sector, industry sector. When we discuss with our subcommittee members, they highlighted that issue very much. Even at the expert committee meetings, experts are also highlighted that issue before going to develop the national action plan. We should have about the clear idea about how much nitrogen waste and how much the nitrogen pollution related to each sector. We don't have that data, and that is biggest challenge we face. And the next thing is we have only very limited government funding for this process. That is also a big challenge we've faced currently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Himali. The next question is to Mihai. Are there already feasibility studies of harnessing nitrogen in developing countries, especially for Uganda? If not, what could be done in reference to UNEA March 2022?
Thank you for the question. Well, the working group will not be able to provide feasibility studies for each country, but is able to provide a template, an approach, a direction. And that being said, we'll have the opportunity through GPNM and through the meetings of the experts, informal experts groups, in case there is an initiative from Uganda or any other country to come with a proposal for setting up an action plan. I think that it will be useful to be put into discussions, and opinions from other countries who probably experience the same challenges will be shared, and hopefully this way will support preparation of action plans in other countries.
Thank you so much, Mihai. The next question goes to Monica. What are some successful conservation and restoration approaches that consider the impact of reactive nitrogen on biodiversity?
Could you repeat, please?
What are some successful conservation and restoration approaches that consider the impact of reactive nitrogen on biodiversity?
Examples of sustainable practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are many, like many cases of agroecology and the practice that make better use of nutrients. Also, like syntopic agriculture or other kind of agriculture. But like I present, there are also countries examples that they submit for the convention on their report, like the India case, China. So the difference now from the previous decades that we have a lot of good examples that we could implement and scale up. Also, we have more capacity. So I think now it's how we can take all these good practice and good examples and implement, how we can help countries like extension services, farm field schools, all the tools that we have, no? But how can we update those techniques and then help to put in place the best techniques to manage the nutrients and also avoid pollution and others consequences that we discussed. I hope I answer your question. If not, please let me know.
Yes, that was a very good answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. So the next question goes to Hussein. What inputs will EMG need from the Nitrogen Working Group or its successor for future EMG-led coordination among UN entities?
Thank you so much. I tried also to respond to this in the chat box, but very briefly, I would say, obviously, UN system is at the disposal of the member states. So depending on what arises from the UNEA 6 on this topic and sort of the needs of the member states from the UN system, then we can focus on that, and there is a demand side from the member state that the EMG provides that coordinated and collaborated input. Then we can focus on that to be able to provide support. So we really count on UNEA resolution and also the working group asks in order to define what contribution the UN system can make. Obviously, what I would like also to say at the same time is that what we need to do more in the UN, and it is a challenge for us on this topic, is more and more showing the urgency of action on this topic, because I don't feel like that urgency is really felt. This is a very complex issue. It has so many dimensions, and as a matter of fact, some dimensions are more positive in certain aspects of realization of social rights. And maybe we need to improve the urgency of action relating to the pollution dimensions of the nutrition, this substance, and that's one element that I would like to highlight here. We really need to work on the science policy dimension of nitrogen management a lot, using the mechanisms under different conventions such as SABSTA and the GEO, the Biodiversity Outlook report and the science policy panel that has been created. It's really to utilize these mechanisms to strengthen this science policy nexus on this topic. I think there is also a lot of need for working on the data management and analysis of the scale of production, consumption, and the waste part of this component or this substance also. So we need to work, as member states are concerned, we need to bring that level of urgency also to the attention of so many sectors in the UN system that are also under the governance of different ministries. So how do we actually communicate the urgency of this matter to the other ministries, which are the governing bodies of the other UN entities? So we need also to bring that interconnection between the governing bodies of UNEP, who are advocating about the urgency of this in terms of the pollution, to the intergovernmental bodies of ILO, to the intergovernmental bodies of UNESCO, FAO, and other institutions, so that in particular, the pollution dimensions of this topic is also receiving adequate attention. I hope that I have answered the question. Over.
Yes, thank you so much, Hussein, for that. The next question is for Claire. Do we need an intergovernmental coordination mechanism? Why not just continue as we are?
Thank you, Andrew. I think the case has been very clearly made as to why we can't continue as we are. This is a very complex situation. We're understanding much more than we ever did, the impacts of nitrogen, both positive and negative. And if we allow the fragmentation that currently exists to continue, then the difficulties in bringing everything together and in having a coherent, comprehensive policy will also continue. We won't be able to properly implement the Global Biodiversity Framework and Target 7 because we won't have the mechanisms to do it. We will continue to see the negative aspects of nitrogen pollution perpetuate. Whether we need an intergovernmental coordination mechanism is, of course, a matter for member states to decide. We do have mechanisms that already exist that give a very good example of what a mechanism might look like. These have existed for mercury, for example, as is shown by the paper, really help to bring everything together and to galvanize that political support for action on mercury as a precursor to the Mercury Treaty, and helped countries to be able to implement properly the policies that needed to be implemented in a coherent and consistent way. So I'll go back to what Hussein has just said about the direction from member states. I think what we need to see is some further direction from the UN member states at UNEA 6 on the direction that they want to go in, and more attention, as Hussein has said, on focusing on the urgency of the problem and the best way we can possibly achieve a consistent and coherent approach that both benefits people and the environment.
Thank you so much, Claire. In the interest of time, I will just hand this over back to Sarah. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the participants for all your questions. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Wanjiru. Thank you to our presenters and the participants for the Q&A session. As you could see, we were unfortunately not able to answer all questions, but we will certainly make sure to address these and also reflect the discussions that we've had in the summary brief that we will share together with the recording after the meeting, and of course also with the presentations. As we indicated, those will all be published on the webinar event page. So now with that, finally, I have the pleasure to invite the chair of the GPNM, Ramesh Ramachandran, to deliver the closing remark of today's webinar. Professor Ramesh is actually a distinguished scientist in the fields of coastal biochemistry, nutrient management and coastal systems, and integrated coastal zone management. Currently, as indicated, he's chairing the GPNM, showcasing his pivotal role in addressing nutrient-related challenges. Ramesh, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. I know that we are already exceeded the time limit. Just wanted to make a couple of points as I wrap up of this very enlightening seminar. I would like to extend my very great thanks to appreciation to all the speakers. Today we have a privilege of diving deep into the different global issue of nutrient management with a very specific focus on various policies on nitrogen, and exploring the latest development and strategies for a sustainable future. I mean, since the lack of time, I don't want to go into the individual speakers. I know that we have very great discussions, and particularly thank the nitrogen working group, Meha, to come over and give us an overview of what has happened so far, and we move forward for the next level of discussions. All this discussion, what we understood is the critical importance of responsible nitrogen management in achieving a multitude of sustainable development goals, whether it is ranging from food security or climate action or biodiversity preservation and the human well-being. So the whole hidden crisis of nitrogen deserves our unwavering attention and collaborative efforts. So the experts and policymakers have shared their knowledge and experience and the pragmatic solutions and also the innovative approaches to tackle the integrate challenges linked to the nitrogen management. So it is clear that integrated strategies, cross-sectoral cooperation, and a harmonious blend of science, policy, and technology are very essential to chart out our course forward. As we conclude this webinar, let us depart with a renewed commitment to sustainable nitrogen management. The GPNM, that is the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management, with the support of the UNEP, will continue to foster dialogue, share best practices, and also catalyze action at local, national, and global levels. We must acknowledge that the journey towards sustainable nitrogen management is a shared responsibility that transcends boundaries, disciplines, and sectors. By embracing the principles and sustainability, we can mitigate the adverse impact of nitrogen pollution while harnessing the potential to nourish our exploring global population. In conclusion, I extend my sincere gratitude to our distinguished speakers, co-chair, and country focal points of UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen, our UNEP colleagues for their outstanding coordination and organization, and the engaged audience for making this webinar a resounding success. Thank you for your kind attention. Back to you, Sarah. If any final word from you.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. No, that was great. Great bridge. You mentioned fostering dialogue. We will certainly continue the webinar series as indicated in the lead up to UNEA 6. So we will announce any upcoming GPNM webinars and invite you also to obviously visit the website. As indicated, we will share all the presentations, recording, and other resources on this webinar event page. And I think with that, just thanking all the presenters again. Thank you so much for your time, for all the great insights. Thank you for all the participants who logged in from around the globe. Really great to see, around 80 participants now in the webinar. And also here in the room, thanks so much to Wanjiru, who has been leading in the organization of this, and Stephanie and Josefina here also. So thanks again and see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.